Everyone. Today in this tutorial we'll discuss on how do we access the Google APIs and how do we work on them. Talking about Google APIs, most of you are familiar with what Google APIs are, but to give a precise information, Google has shared some of the APIs which can be publicly accessed. And if you are new to API and if you want to uh, know how does the API work or do some uh, exercises on APIs, then Google API platform is the best one where Google has shared a lot of APIs, like they have their own packages so that you can access those APIs and work on them. That's the reason we actually use Google APIs if we want to automate it, if we want to do any of the exercises or know how does the API work if we are or if you are a newbie to API. That's the reason in this tutorial I would show you how do we access such Google APIs and get it worked on your local system. Okay. So before starting, I'll just show you what are all the Google APIs which we have in public. Okay. So here, if you go to Google API Explorer, you get the list of Google APIs which you can select and work on, right? And you have APIs like Google Calendar API, Google Map API, or many more things. So you can choose any one which you are interested in and work on that. Okay, there seems some problem over here. So what we'll try to do is that we'll directly access Google Calendar API. Okay, over here, yeah. So this is a Google Calendar API, and here you actually get into developers.google.com/calendar page, and here you get all the information on Calendar API, which is from the Google, right? So to get all those API information, we'll just go to reference section, and in the reference section, see, these are all the list of the API for Google Calendar. Okay, so these are all kind of packages or kind of um, folders. Like calendar list is one set where you have these many APIs. Okay, so in the calendar list, if you get into get API, so what get API is nothing but it is a type of API. So you have post, you have get, you have delete, you have put. So get is an API where you can retrieve the information from a API. Okay, it's a kind of type of API. And when you just click on this, you get all the list of the get APIs in the Google Calendar. So it has how many APIs? One, that is calendar list API. Okay, where calendar ID is a parameter, right? So this is kind of optional, and these still here are the mandatory thing. So that's how you get the information on the get request call. If you try to access this API, you know, directly from your system, you wouldn't be able to access it. It usually gives you authorization error. See, request is missing. It requires some authentication credential. So that's the reason why this tutorial is meant for. So if you want to work on Google API, you cannot directly access these APIs. You have to use an authorization token, and I'll show you how do we get those tokens. Okay, this is one API where Google Calendar API has. Okay, so if you go to another API, which is insert API, okay, post call API, then you get one more type of API with request body, right? So here, see, this is one more API which can be used to insert the calendar list. So get API will just get you the calendar list, but insert API would actually, you know, insert some of the new values into your calendar list. And of course, it has some of the request body. Okay, these are all the request bodies. Okay, it has ID, it has color ID, and you can even see which are all optional, which are all required properties. So you have to pass ID in the post call, okay, in the request body, and background color, color ID, default reminder. These are all options. You may pass it or may not pass it, okay, but whenever you are passing it, make sure that you pass the right value over here, right? uh, you can even try it out. There's a option here in the developers.google.com. So if you just observe the right panel, there's an option to try this API. Okay, so you have an option to add the parameters, right? You have an option to remove the parameters. Okay, so what I'll try to do now is, since ID is just the optional parameter, I'll just add one ID and you can just execute it. Okay, this is one way of accessing the API. And again, see, it says that you need some of the credentials like Google Auth and API key. So before accessing this, I'll show you how do we set up your credentials. Okay, so for that, see, this is about how, how the information on the Google APIs. And our next part is how do we access them? How do we make them work in our system? Yeah, for that you need credentials, you need auth credentials, and I'll show you how do we uh, get those auth credentials. For that, just get into the site developers.google.com. There's a beautiful article which gives you the information on how do we set up the credentials, auth credentials to work with Google APIs. Okay, it has step-by-step method. Okay, so as you can see in the page, it says that first go to Google API console and select a project and click on continue, go to credentials. So we'll follow the same process over here. Okay, first what I'll do is that I'll just get into Google API console page. This usually takes time to load, so let's wait with some patience. Okay. Uh, if you are using it for the first time, you have to sign in. I'll sign in with my Gmail account. To create a project, we'll get into a new project. And let's create it as Google Calendar project. Okay. And let's leave it as no organization and let's create it now. Okay. Google Calendar project has been successfully created. Now what we'll try to do is that select that project in this drop down menu Okay. And once you have selected it, what is our next step? Go to credentials. Okay. Click on the navigation menu, get into API side. Okay. Inside API and services, you have credentials option. Click on that option. Okay, cool. Now, next is you have to create a credential. Click on create credential, and here you have to create auth client ID. Okay, you have options like to create API key, service account. Uh, there are some APIs which uses API key to access, you know, but here we'll choose the second one, auth client ID, so that you create such client ID. Okay, it says that to create an auth client ID, you must first set up a product name on the screen. So let's go to auth consent screen. That is this one, or you can even click on this option directly. Okay, and let's make it as choose you want to configure it as external. Okay, create it. Huh? So now what is my, you have to fill up this consent screen. For that, just put your application name as calendar API. Okay, logo, let it be blank. This is your email ID. Okay, add a scope. Click on this add scope. Okay, there are no scopes, so cancel it. Okay, that's it. Just save it. So I'll show you how do we add scopes. So you need to actually add some of the scopes when you access or when you enable some of the APIs. Okay, that is another step. I'll show you once that step is complete. So our first step is to create a project. We did that, and then go to auth consent screen. Okay, before going to credential and fill up that auth consent screen. I have completed it. Now go to credential and create your auth cred. Okay, I'll just click on this create credential, auth client ID. Okay, create auth client ID. So you have to select what is your application type, right? Um, so my application is actually a web application because I'm trying to access the APIs, right? So I'll just give it as a web application. Okay. You can name anything. I'll keep it as web client one itself. Um, and yeah, just create it. Okay, so once you create, you get your client ID, you get your secret ID. So you can even copy this, or you can even, you know, if you want to copy, you can copy and keep it in a folder, or you can even get these information at any time. Okay, just get into your credential page, and uh, you have option to get your client ID, and if you click on this thing, you will get your secret key also. Okay. So here we actually missed one part, that is you have to configure some of the uh, origins, which is your JavaScript and authorized redirect URL. Okay, what you will try to do is that we'll just edit this authenticate auth client ID which we just created now. And here, just copy this and paste it in authorized JavaScript origin parameter. Okay, authorized JavaScript origin parameter, add the URI, done. And here for authorized URL, get this and add it, done. So now save it up. These 2 points which you should not miss when you are creating the client ID. Okay, so our auth client is created successfully now, and when you create the auth client ID, your client ID and your secret key will be generated. So this is your client ID. You can copy it from here. And if you want the secret key, you just have to click on this web client one, which is your client name, ID name, and you get the secret key over here. And this is your client ID. Okay. Now this is done. Now our next step is to, you know, we have completed till here, that is the creation of the auth client ID. Our next step is to, you know, try the REST API in the auth playground. Okay, for that what we'll try to do is that uh, before trying it out, there's actually one uh, access required. There's actually one access required to be taken from the API, that is to enable the API. Okay, so here we are using Google API, Google Calendar APIs, right? So to use those API, it's very important to enable those APIs into your Gmail account, right? So for that, click on library, okay, which is under API and services section. And here search for the Google Calendar API. Okay, I'll just type it as calendar. Yeah, click on this Google Calendar API and enable it, so that it just gives you the permission to use these APIs in your local system using your account with the credentials. Okay, enable it. You again have this option to try this API over here. So this is one more option to try for. So now we'll just enable it. Once the APIs are enabled, it's very important to add the scope. If you remember, while we were completing the consent screen, auth consent screen, there was an option to add a scope, right? But we were not able to find any of the scopes in the value, right? But now, since we have enabled this API, we'll have some of the values to add the scope. We'll complete that. For that, just go to API services section. Inside that, we get into auth screen. Okay, and here edit this app. Okay, and now add the scope. So here, since you have enabled Google Calendar API, there are some of the set of the APIs which need the permission to add the scopes, right? So what we'll try to do is that you just select all those APIs, yeah, and add it so that you get the permission to access these APIs, yeah, and save it up. Yeah. So this is the completion of the complete credential section. Now our next step is to use the auth playground. Okay, so here auth playground has, this is the link for the auth playground. Okay, just click on this link and access it. So what the auth playground is nothing but it is a platform provided by Google, you know, to work on or to play with the Google APIs. Okay, so basically, whenever we want to try it out on API or whenever we are working with API, we use tools like Postman or Sophia or many other things. You know, sometimes if it's a get API call, just a get API call, we use the browser. But Google has provided a platform which is Auth 2.0 platform where you can access their APIs without any of these tools. So authorization, getting the token, everything are much easier when you use this Auth Playground platform. I'll show you how do we use this platform to access the Google APIs. Okay. So for that, get into this site, which is developers.google.com/authplayground site. And here, since we are trying to access our APIs using the credentials, custom credentials which we had created, instead of getting into these steps, I'll first go to settings. Okay. And here inside the settings, there's an option called as use your own auth credential. Check this box. Okay. When you click on this box, it asks you two things. One is your client ID and your client secret. Your client ID and your client secret are available in your credential section. Okay, just copy that and paste it over here, and even your secret key, right? Once you've copied it, go to the step one. Okay, here our step one is to select and authorize the APIs. To select the scope. What are our APIs? Our APIs are nothing but the Google Calendar API, which we are working out now, which we are trying to access it. So for that, I'll just search for Calendar API. Okay. So to access this API, it is very important to add the scopes, which I had added just previously. Okay. Make sure that that step is complete. If that is not complete, then you cannot access any of these APIs. It just gives you permission error. Okay. And inside this calendar API, select all these scopes and click on authorization API button. Okay. So it takes some time and it asks you some of the sign-in permissions. Give those permissions. Select the account. I'll select my account for now. Okay, it asks you some of the permission. Okay, allow it. Done. Now, See, our first step is complete, right? And here in the settings, you have this option enabled. That is, use your auth credential. And our second step is to get the token, right? So once you've got the authorization code from the step one, this is your authorization code from the step one, click on this exchange authentication key token and you'll get a refresh token and then access token, okay? And these tokens can be used to access the APIs. Click on this. It has generated two tokens, right? Sorry. One is your refresh token, one is your access token. Okay. So this token has a validity of only few seconds, which is around 3580 seconds. Okay. And it keeps on changing after this. So you have an option to auto refresh whenever this expires. Okay. So now you can even click this or you can just leave it where you can manually refresh the access token. So this is an option to manually refresh it so that your expiration period also increases, right? I'll copy this token now in the step 2. Sorry. And let's go to the step 3, right? So no need to copy the token because since it's a Google Auth playground, it uses it. Okay. So now what we'll try to do is that we'll try the same API to access, which didn't work for us without the credential, right? Copy the URL, paste it over here, and send the request. See, it worked. You got a 200 response with all these headers, and this is the response body. Okay. So this is how you access the Google API, which is Google Calendar API from your local system on the Auth Playground. Now, if you want to try it out on your own Postman tool, it is possible. Okay, I'll show you how is that. Just copy this request URL. Okay, open the Postman. Okay, I'll open a new request. Right, copy this link. Okay, just copying the link doesn't work. You have to add some of the headers. Sorry, some of the authorization. What is your authorization? Your authorization should be a bearer token. Okay. When you click on this bearer token, you get an option to insert the token. Now, in the second step, you had got a token, right? Use that token here. It's not expired yet. Paste it over here and with this URL, just access it. See, it works. You get the entire response. But if you don't pass anything, if you make it as no auth and when you send it, you get an error that some authentication is required, authorization is required. But if you pass a proper bearer token, yeah, you get a response code. So this is how uh, the way to access the Google APIs. Google has a lot of APIs where Google Calendar is one among them, and it has some set of APIs, and calendar list is one of it. And you have many APIs inside this calendar API, which can be inserting the calendar API or list API or channels, colors, events. So you can explore on all these things, and to access them, it's the same way, it's the same approach. Get the token from the auth playground. Okay, and to get the token you have to make sure that you have some credentials set up, um, and that token can be used to access all these APIs so that you can work on it. So thank you for attending this. Thanks a lot. Bye.